Hi everyone, I'm Lisa and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. One of the new stamp sets in the new annual catalog is called Ribbon of Courage. You may have noticed it because it's got beautiful ribbons that can be used in any color to represent any cause. Today's card uses the pinks to represent breast cancer in the new Berry Burst in color. So pretty. And I'm going to do a watercolor resist technique with some heat embossing. I'm real excited to show you how to put it together. Remember, you can find pictures of today's project as well as supplies over on my blog. You can click on the information button right here at the top of the screen and it'll navigate you to my blog. While you're there, make sure you click on the Online Classes tab. I've got some fun ways for you to stamp with me from home. Let's get over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. Here's a close-up of the card that we're going to create together today. I'm using a little bit of a black background here with a piece of cardstock because it's a lot of white and I want to make sure that you can really appreciate this. Let's go ahead and get started on this. I'm using the thick Whisper white cardstock. Absolutely love this. I know you can't appreciate it just by looking at it, but it's 100-pound paper, which makes it so sturdy for your card bases. If you try it, you're going to fall in love with it. I don't recommend folding it without scoring it first. So that's why I've got my trimmer out here. Remember, the light blade on the Stampin' Up! Trimmer is going to score and the dark blade is going to cut. So we're going to move that dark one out of the way. And we are going to come in at 5.5, which is half of this, and we are going to score. Now that we've got the crease line, we can go ahead and fold it in half and then use our bone folder to make that nice crisp edge. This is going to be the base of our card. We really don't need to do too much to this just yet. I'm going to work next on a piece of watercolor paper. Love, love, love watercolor paper because everyone looks like an artist with it. You cannot mess it up. You can go back over it numerous times and saturate it like crazy without it pilling, so you don't have to worry about that. We are going to work on the white surface for this only because we need an absorption area here for what we're going to be doing. We're going to use this absolutely beautiful ribbon from the brand new stamp set, Ribbon of Courage. This just debuted in the annual catalog on June 1st. Absolutely gorgeous. I love the encouraging sentiments and I also love the hearts. So we're going to actually begin with heat embossing. So I want to prepare my surface. Whenever you heat emboss, you should always use your embossing buddy first. This is a little anti-static bag. There's a powder in here that when you rub it across your paper will tell the powder to only stick where you're going to place ink. That's going to eliminate those little flecks that you get oftentimes when you heat emboss. So I'm going to push that aside. I'm going to use my stamp face up because it's a rather large stamp, and I'm going to ink it with Versamark ink. Versamark is an invisible type ink used for watermarks and for heat embossing. Absolutely love it. And so I'm going to place that here, and then we're going to die cut it, so I really don't have to worry about exactly where it's at. I'm going to push, push, push really well. There's lots of intricate detail in the stamp, and I want to make sure I don't miss any of that. So I'm going to press. Going to lay that on my Stampin' Scrub. One thing about Versamark, you don't want to leave that on your stamps too long. It does leave a sticky residue. Now I know you can't see anything, but you will. This is white embossing powder, and I'm going to go over the image generously, working over a coffee filter to catch any of the excess so we can put it back in the bottle. Going to give that a little tap. And I don't know if you can see it or not. Can you see it? It's white on white, but it's going to come to life here in just a few minutes. I'm going to set that to the side because now I'm going to bring in my heat tool. The Stampin' Up! Heat tool has two speeds. There's a 1 and a 2. 1 is great for drying. If you have paper that needs some drying, like maybe this, if you had got it oversaturated and you want to mount it in a hurry. Second is for setting the powder. Now, because watercolor paper is very absorbent, it takes a little bit longer for it to heat set. And I'm going to recommend that you start in one area and you make sure that the powder has changed and looks more like a shiny enamel finish before you start skipping all over, because it's very, very easy to miss a spot. Now, once the gun gets hot, you can see it turning now. Once the gun gets hot, it'll actually maintain its heat for a period of time. So if you're doing numerous cards, you can do them one right after the other. Can you see how it looks more glossy white than powdery? So I'm just going to move this close to the paper. And again, this takes longer on watercolor paper than it does on regular cardstock, just because of the thickness involved. Lots of layers of paper here. I'm going to turn that because that's very hot. I want to keep my fingers away from it. The other thing is you want to make sure that you don't overheat emboss it. Otherwise, the impression will not look raised. It'll look sunk and look kind of flat. So we're going to give this just a few seconds to cool off, and then we're going to do that watercoloring technique. Now I've got also a tip for you while we're waiting. How many of you have heat embossed and you've had stray powder all over your work surface? Or in this case, it might be the embossing buddy. A Swiffer is my best friend. So I just go right over that work surface. That'll pick up all that stray powder and any of that powder left from the embossing buddy. Okay, so now we've got our image. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to die cut it. And I'm going to actually use an oval for this. So I'm using the layering oval framelits, regular circles and scallops. I'm going to take the largest one. I've got my big shot here with the magnetic platform. I've got a clear mat on the bottom. Here is my ribbon. Again, I know it's difficult to see because it's white on white, but I promise it's going to come to life soon. I'm just centering my oval the very best that I can, and I'm going to put a clear mat over the top to protect that die, and then I'm just going to crank it through, and that'll die cut our shape for us. Any cracking and popping you hear on your big shot, that's all normal stuff, so don't let that bother you. And here we go. We've got our image. Okay, we're ready to do some watercoloring. We're going to use the brand new Berry Burst in color. But to watercolor, we're going to need like a well of ink. So what I like to do is flip this over, squeeze it from the back. We made those flexible so that when you open the pad, you have a well of ink inside the lid. You're never going to want to put your aqua painter or your blender pen inside the pad, always from here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my aqua painter, and I absolutely love this. There's no dipping water in a cup anymore. Those days are over. You're going to unscrew it. You're going to put a little tap water inside, and they're going to screw it back on. And I'm going to start by actually getting the paper wet. So I'm going to squeeze a little water on here and get it wet. And remember, watercolor paper is very, very absorbent. And then I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to start rubbing color over this. And you're going to notice too right away, and I'm going to stretch that out because I want it darker at the top, that embossing we just did is really emerging. Isn't it beautiful? And then I'm just going to gently work my way down. I'm going to color the whole thing. I want it a little bit lighter at the bottom than it is at the top. So I'm going to have to go back and do several coats because we want to make sure we can see the bottom, even though it's going to be lighter. So I'm going to go back over this, and you can see there's no rhyme or reason to this. This is something even the kids can do. Really, really simple and fun. So I'm going to go back over the top now, and I'm going to make it darker. So I'm going to add more ink. So I want this more to look like an ombre effect. So I've got darker, and now I'm stretching my ink out, and I'm bringing it down, and it's lighter now at the bottom. And see the beauty of watercolor paper. Very, very resilient to color and to water. So I'm going to bring that down a little bit further so we've got a little bit of color here at the bottom. Okay, I can see I need a little bit more water here. So I'm going to run some water on there. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this sit and dry. We're not going to be able to mount it while it's wet. No two of these are ever going to look the same. Every single one's going to look a little bit different. So I'm just going to close this up. And just to speed up the drying process, this is where we can use our heat tool again on speed number 1. So I'm going to use it on number 1. That's going to help dry the paper. Again, the gun is very, very warm, so you're going to want to make sure that you're not holding it too closely to where that nozzle is. And that's just going to speed up the drying process. The paper curls, that's normal. A way to help that is to flip it over and heat it from the back. And oftentimes that will help straighten out your paper. But the front is still real wet, so we're going to let that get a little drier. All right, we've got our finished image. I'm just going to brush off any little flakes of paper that may be on there. All right, so let's go ahead and mount it. Got my base here with my thick Whisper White, and we're going to use dimensionals. And remember, because it's curled a little bit, we're going to have to be a little bit more generous than we normally would, because we want to make sure that we've got it good and anchored. So I'm going to do one around each of the sides and then one in the middle. I'm going to take off that paper backing. And then I'm going to mount this to the center of my card here. Okay, and then next I'm going to use the same ink, and this time I'm going to do the stamping. And this comes from that same stamp set. It says Courage. Very appropriate. So I'm going to ink that up, just making sure I've got it where I want it. And then I'm going to stamp this now down here at the bottom. It's pretty, but it needs bling. If it's at my house, it needs bling, so I'm going to take some pearls. Now, the new pearls that just came out in the catalog are no longer strung together. You don't have to fight this strand. Love that change. It's going to give us a little bit more freedom to use these individually like we can these other sizes here. So what I did is I took a medium size one and I mounted it up here near the top. And I took another medium size one, and this one I mounted right about here. And then another here. And then I used some of these little tiny ones just to give it a little bit of interest. I didn't want the entire card to be flat. And then another small one. I'm going to place this one here near the bottom. All right. Really simple, but isn't that beautiful? That just ombre look to the embossing and the watercoloring. Here's the card we created together today. Here's the one I made before you joined me. Remember to head over to my blog to see the pictures. You'll get a supply list there as well. And make sure you click on my online classes tab. Got lots of fun ways for you to stamp with me from home. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.